Vado? Okay. Good evening. We are here again in the Material Balance channel, where we are making some pills for the Future Master, the second edition that is coming this March. And we are pleased to be here with Paolo Mazza, that is partner at the studio of Antonio Citerio and Patricia Biel. We are very pleased to have you here, Paolo. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
We are one of our main and key important teacher at the Master. And today we want to know a little bit more of what have been the experience and what about the future. So the first question would be, why do you think a Master that deals with material culture, digital and design today is important?
I think architecture is passing through a moment of great transformation. We are challenging global crisis. We have wars, we have global warming, we have limited resources, we have misinformation and disinformation, and therefore the architecture is changing a lot. This master, which deals with material culture, design, and digital transformation, is basically addressing this information. I believe that material culture is much more than the chemical composition or the aesthetical finish of a material. It has to do with how the material has been used, has been sourced, has been respected in times, and through this lesson of tradition, we are able to innovate. The other aspects, as the digital, for example, helps us. We are in a moment of incredible digital advancement, which is extremely rapid and changing basically every month. But at the same time, we have these new possibilities, but we need to ensure that the design somehow enables us to tackle this architectural challenge that we have in a way so that we don't disperse, or that we can rather enhance local tradition and traditional uses of materials in a new digital way. This design needs to be rooted into the history of the materials and can't be just an invention or innovation of a complete new kind.
Yeah. And so what did you do in your module, looking at this wide perspective, and maybe also what you do in the studio as an architect, mixing together the material culture, the innovation, the tools? I know some of them and they are very nice. And maybe it's what was your experience that you took into the master last year and what are you doing today?
So last year's master was particularly interesting for me because we had a very international cohort of students in the master from every place in the world. So we had the opportunity to address this issue of the material culture. The theme was, last year's theme was wood, in a very international way. So what we did is ask the students hands-on to source some of their local tradition of their country, of their home country, and the traditions that were used to, for example, harvest wood. And we tried to integrate this with advanced technological solutions. And it has been actually a very, very interesting experience because each of the students came up with quite innovative solutions and harvesting techniques that are common in their country that can be an example of what we can do with our local resources. This is an attitude that we have very often in the office, and we try to look at our past, obviously, to see our future. And especially with wood, there is a 1,000-year-long tradition, and we have artifacts of wood that are thousands of years old, easily hundreds of years old, probably even in our home. And this has something to do how the material was harvested, sourced, respected, used, and how it was meant to be sustainable. Sustainable also because they couldn't simply afford to renew that often. And so things had to last. And so we explored the equation that basically quality of using the materials can be equal to sustainability.
Yeah.
And this is an approach that we are trying to have in our office always, because sustainability is not nice to have anymore, it's essential.
Yeah, and matching together the digital, so how you can simulate matter so that you optimize the kind of material you have, where it comes from, trace it. Plus, maybe also, I remember you told me also some history we have forgotten about wood. Like if you cut the wood in a certain period, it's a good wood for fire. If you cut it in another period so the pores, they close, so it's good for construction. And also we have sort of lost this part that is very ancestral somehow, that today we can merge, I think, with digital tools, but at the same time knowing how nature works. So putting the two together, I think, can really give a real sustainability, as you were saying.
Definitely, definitely. Also because it is sometimes a little bit difficult in an industrial process to recover this, let's say, ancient knowledge and apply it to an industrial world. And this is where I believe that digital innovation can help us a lot, because we can really, in the industrial process nowadays, define through digital algorithms solutions that can be, let's say, both custom made or precisely tuned for that material, but within the industrial approach, which was more difficult until very recently. Now with all these technologies that helps us to produce digitally, we can basically insert the custom within the custom product, or the specific product within an industrial process, which is something that is quite new and very interesting. So we
and
also,
the good competences to have, I think, as an architect. So it's not only the digital, but it's not only the matter, but trying to merge the two.
Absolutely, absolutely. This let's say, this notion of digital artisanship is very interesting, where we can probably also combine what has been always a very characteristic of our specific country of Italy, the love for details and for unique solutions within an industrial process that can be certified, that can be guaranteed, and that you can use in projects internationally.
And this leads to the final biggest question, maybe a hard one. Where do you think we're going? How do you think architecture can impact society today? Which type of problems we can solve? It's a big one. It's a hard one.
The next one will be, what is the sense of life? Okay, so
at least what you see from your perspective, some traits, no? Oh.
I think architecture is changing probably in mainly 4 key items for me. It needs to be definitely context-based. So what we are talking is not only the geographical location or the material we build a building of. Patricia Viel, the founder of our office with Antonio Citerio, talks about raw materials for these buildings and the cultural, historical context, the needs of the population, even anticipating what the needs could be, are part of these raw materials of which we build our buildings. It's not just the construction materials, but it's the context itself. And this is extremely important. Then obviously sustainability is an absolute necessity of architecture and will change. We will have to design buildings that are much more resilient, but not only resilient to climate changes, harder storms or heavy rains, whatever it is, simplifying, but also to the cultural changes that we are facing right now. And it needs to be ready and flexible enough to adapt to these changes. Another aspect which is closely related is that the design, in my opinion, needs to be much more human-centered. And here we are not talking about real mere functionality. It needs to be human-centered in a sense that is implying also, that is including also social aspects, cultural aspects. It needs to be
contemporary.
Not only contemporary, it needs to be really specific for that population in that specific place.
Okay, for their needs.
Yes, and there obviously the digital transformation that we are experiencing is extremely important. So the digital integration will be another very important aspect of the architecture of the future. And not only that it allows us to visualize incredibly complex projects in a very, very immersive way, or to handle immense cloud point surveys. We have a lot of digital tools, but this digital integration needs also to allow us to use these information and resources in a much more precise way. We were discussing about misinformation, and we have now the opportunity to access immense amount of data, even specifically for the project itself or the location. There are a lot of freely available tools of immense data amounts that we need to integrate in our building and to have a more scientific approach so that we can make it intellectable and readable for everybody.
Yeah, and when it's sort of true, it goes faster, so you don't have sort of friction. When it's misinformation or disinformation, it closes sometimes.
Exactly.
It has empty loops. Well, if you can show, I think, it's a big advantage somehow.
Absolutely. Also because within these large amount of data, we still need to do choices of which of these data we think is more important, or we can open up for scenarios which integrate and show the differences on various focus of this data. So what happens if I give the sustainability to the human-centric design? What happens if I give it just to sustainability? What happens if I mix them? And so on. True. And you can open a lot of scenarios which were basically unthinkable until very, very recently, because of the amount of time you would have needed to get through all this information.
Yeah. So if we can summarize also, like, sort of life is be true to yourself.
That's very good. Do the right thing.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. It's a very good summary. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paolo.
Much.
Thank you for being here. Thanks, everyone. And we see you at the next meeting.
Thank you. Bye.